6 top labs couldn't start the dead Ferrari. A single dad diagnosed it in 4 minutes. 6 of the most credentialed automotive diagnostic laboratories in the eastern United States had looked at this car. 6 teams, 14 combined engineers, 143 billable hours. A total invoice sitting at $268,000. And the car still would not start. It had not started in 22 months. It was a 1995 Ferrari F50, one of 349 ever built. Current insured value, $4.1 million. And on the morning of March 7th, the woman who owned it, Serena Voss, CEO of Voss Meridian Capital, net worth somewhere north of $800 million, had run out of ideas and had called the number she had been given by a man she barely remembered, meeting at a charity auction 2 years ago. The man who answered was in the middle of making his daughter's lunch. His name was Levi Cole. He had calloused hands and a truck with 160,000 miles on it. Behind him, if you could have seen through the phone, was a 6-year-old girl sitting at the kitchen table with a stuffed gray fox named Pepper, practicing her letters. Serena Voss asked him if he'd ever worked on a Ferrari F50. He thought about it for 2 seconds. He said he had worked on one once, a long time ago, under circumstances he would explain when he got there. She asked when he could come. He said he needed to drop his daughter at school first. She said she had a team of engineers on site. He said that was fine. He said they could watch. What happened in the 4 minutes after Levi Cole opened the engine cover of that Ferrari is the reason you need to keep listening. Press play. This one earns it. His name was Levi Cole, 32 years old. He lived in a 2-bedroom house in Wendell, North Carolina, with his daughter Maki, who was 6, and Pepper, who was Maki's stuffed gray fox, and who had been everywhere with her since the day Levi had driven home from the hospital with Maki in the back seat, and a knot in his chest the size of a closed fist, 3 days after Anna had died. Maki had been 3 at the time. She did not remember her mother except in the way you remember things you have been told, carefully, with a kind of reverence for the gaps. She had a photograph on her dresser. She said goodnight to it every night. Pepper sat beside the photograph on the nights Maki forgot to bring him to bed. Levi ran a 1-man diagnostic and repair service out of a rented bay on the east side of Wendell. Not a shop in the traditional sense. No signage. No website. A phone number that circulated through a specific and narrow network of people who understood what they were calling about. He did not advertise. He did not need to. His reputation moved the way the reputations of very good mechanics move, slowly, specifically, through the conversations of people who had run out of other options and had been told, finally, to call this number. He drove a 2004 F-150 with a rebuilt transmission and a crack in the dashboard that Maki had decorated with a series of small fox stickers. On the passenger seat, most mornings, sat Pepper, because Maki brought Pepper to school, and Levi carried Pepper to school, and the handoff happened. At the classroom door, it was their system. It had been their system for 2 years. On the morning of March 7th, he dropped Maki at school at 8:14. Maki kissed Pepper on the top of his gray head. She handed him back to Levi. She went through the door without looking back. The way children go through doors when they trust that the world behind them is going to stay put. Levi put Pepper on the passenger seat. He pulled out his phone. He looked at the address Serena Voss had texted him. He looked at Pepper. "We've got a Ferrari," he said. Pepper said nothing. He had the quality of a very good listener. Levi drove. The Voss Meridian Capital headquarters occupied 7 floors of a building in Raleigh that had glass on all 4 sides and a private underground parking facility that was, at 8:47 in the morning, the most expensive parking garage in a 100-mile radius. The F50 was in Bay 12. It was covered with a fitted car cover in burgundy microfiber that had the Ferrari crest embroidered on the center. 2 engineers were standing near it with tablets. A third was on the phone in the corner. The man who met Levi at the elevator was named Garrett Cross. 47 years old, navy blazer. The kind of composed that required maintenance. He was the head of Voss Meridian's facilities and technical operations. And he had been managing the Ferrari situation for 22 months. And the Ferrari situation had not improved his standing with Serena Voss in any measurable way. He looked at Levi. He looked at the truck Levi had arrived in, which he had seen on the security monitor before coming down. He looked at the toolbox Levi was carrying, which was a standard mid-size snap-on rollaway that had been with Levi for 11 years, and showed it. "You're the diagnostic consultant," Garrett said. It was not quite a question and not quite a statement. It was the verbal equivalent of a raised eyebrow. "Levi Cole," Levi said. "Garrett Cross. I manage technical operations here." He glanced at the toolbox. "What diagnostic systems are you running?" "I'll start with my eyes," Levi said. Garrett looked at him for a moment. "The 6 labs ran full system scans," he said. "OBD integration, scope analysis, full fuel system pressure mapping, compression across all 12 cylinders." "I read the reports," Levi said. A pause. "Mrs. Voss forwarded them to you?" "Last night," Levi said. "All 6. Garrett absorbed this. He turned and walked toward Bay 12. Levi followed. The 2 engineers near the car looked up. The one on the phone moved it away from his ear. Garrett stopped at the car cover. He looked at Levi. "Before we go any further," he said, "I want to be transparent with you. We've had 2 specialists from Ferrari's North American technical team. We've had the diagnostic lab from Duke Automotive Sciences. We've had 3 independent performance shops with track credentials. Not one of them could identify the fault. We're not looking for someone who's going to charge us for another inconclusive session." "I understand," Levi said. "What's your diagnostic rate?" "I'll tell you what's wrong with it first," Levi said. "Then we talk about rate." Garrett looked at him. He looked at the 2 engineers, who were both watching now. He looked back at Levi. "All right," he said. He pulled back the car cover. The Ferrari F50 sat in the light of the bay like something that had been dreaming. Rosso Corsa. The original paint, showing its age in the way that original paint shows age. Not damaged, but lived in. The carbon fiber bodywork had the subtle texture of the correct vintage. The engine lid was glass, which was part of the F50's design, and through it you could see the 4.7-liter, naturally aspirated V12, which was derived from the 1990 Formula One Ferrari engine, and which had not fired in 22 months. Levi set down his toolbox. He walked around the car once. He did not touch it. He looked at it the way a man looks at a thing he is reading, not observing. He stopped at the rear. He crouched. He looked at the exhaust outlets. He stood. He walked to the driver's side. He crouched again. He looked at the sill. He stood up. He opened his toolbox. He removed one tool. It was not a scanner. It was not a scope. It was a small digital refractometer, the kind used for testing fluid concentrations, and a penlight. He opened the engine lid. He leaned in. He shone the light at a specific point in the fuel delivery system. He stood back up in 45 seconds. He looked at Garrett. "Your fuel," he said. Garrett blinked. "The fuel system was tested across all 6 evaluations," Garrett said. "Pressure is within spec. Flow rate, not the system," Levi said. "The fuel itself." He set the refractometer on the edge of the bay. "There's water in it, not contamination from a single event. Gradual condensation accumulation, probably over 8 to 14 months, from the tank being stored at varying temperatures in an underground facility that has seasonal humidity cycling. The fuel's water content is approximately 4.3%. The F50's injection calibration won't fire below a water content threshold of about 1.8. The engine is reading bad fuel and going into a protective non-start loop. It's not a fault in any system. It's the fuel. The bay was quiet. Not the quiet of an empty room. The quiet of a room where four people have each stopped a different thing they were doing. The engineer on the phone lowered it fully. He looked at his colleague. His colleague looked at Garrett. Garrett looked at Levi. 4 minutes. One of the engineers said, to no one specific. He was looking at his watch. He had started timing when Levi walked to the car. Levi Cole had worked on one Ferrari F50 before. He had been 24 years old. It had not been in a private underground facility. It had been in a converted barn in Chatham County, North Carolina, that belonged to a retired engineer named Benjamin Marsh, who had acquired the car, in circumstances Benjamin described only as complicated, and who had spent 9 years restoring it in private before anyone else knew he had it. Benjamin Marsh was 71 now. He walked with a cane since the hip replacement 2 years ago. He lived in the same house in Chatham County and still had the barn, though the F50 was gone, sold privately 2 years after Levi had helped him sort the fuel delivery system, for an amount Benjamin had refused to specify, but which had allowed him to build a proper workshop and a very nice porch. Benjamin had met Levi when Levi was 19. Levi had been working the counter at an auto parts store on Route 64, and Benjamin had come in looking for a specific vacuum fitting that was no longer manufactured, and Levi had told him he couldn't order it, but he could make one. And he had, on his lunch break, from a piece of fuel line and a brass barb, and it had worked perfectly. And Benjamin had looked at the fitting, and then at Levi and said, "What are you doing working a parts counter?" What Levi was doing was working a parts counter, taking care of his mother who was sick, and teaching himself everything he could find about internal combustion engines from a library of manuals he had been accumulating since he was 14. He had never been to school for it. He had never needed to be told that he was exceptional at it, because the work itself told him. Benjamin had become a mentor, not loudly, not with ceremony. The way good mentors work, through specific conversations at specific moments, and the occasional phone call that arrived exactly when it was needed. He had called Benjamin the night before, after reading the 6 lab reports. Condensation accumulation, Benjamin had said before Levi had finished explaining. "That's what I think," Levi had said. "None of the labs tested the fuel directly," Benjamin had said. "They tested the system. There's a difference." "I know," Levi had said. "You've known since page 2 of the first report," Benjamin had said. It was not a question. Levi had said nothing. "How old is the little one now?" Benjamin had said. 6, Levi had said. "She has a fox. Better than a rabbit," Benjamin had said. Levi had laughed, which was something he did not do frequently, but which, when it happened, was a real thing. "Good night, Benjamin," he had said. "Go fix the Ferrari," Benjamin had said. Makey Cole did not know what a Ferrari was in any specific way. She knew it was a car her father was going to fix. She knew it was a very expensive car, because he had mentioned that once, and she had thought about it and then said, "More expensive than our car," and he had said yes, quite a bit more. And she had looked at the F-150, which had fox stickers on the dashboard and a blanket on the back seat that was for Pepper. And she had said, "Ours is better, though." And Levi had not corrected this. She was at school now, doing what she did on Tuesdays, which was reading, and then drawing, and then something involving a project about plants that Levi had helped her prepare for, by looking up what photosynthesis was at 11 o'clock the night before, and then explaining it in terms of what would happen if Pepper needed to eat sunlight, which Maki had found very instructive. Pepper was in the truck. He was in the passenger seat. He was, technically, not doing anything. But Levi had a habit, which he would not have described as a habit out loud, of talking to Pepper when Maki was not there. He had started doing it without meaning to 2 years ago, and it had become the kind of thing that had simply folded into the texture of ordinary days. He had told Pepper driving to Raleigh this morning, that this was going to be straightforward if he was right and complicated if he was wrong. He had told Pepper that he was not wrong. Pepper had looked at the road ahead with his glass eyes and his gray plush face and his small embroidered smile, and the truck had gone on down the highway. He had been right. Garrett Cross was on the phone with Serena Voss at 9:23. He had stepped to the far corner of the bay. Levi could hear the one side of the conversation that was Garrett's, which was mostly short answers, with the quality of a man delivering news he has not fully processed yet. The two engineers, their names were Phil and Naveen, and they had been on site since 7, were standing near the car with the energy of people who were reconsidering something, not loudly, internally. Phil had a background in turbomachinery. Naveen had a master's from Georgia Tech in vehicle dynamics. They had both reviewed 6 comprehensive diagnostic reports. They had both been present for the third lab's full system scope analysis, which had taken 11 hours and produced a 200-page document that had ultimately concluded that the fault was intermittent and likely. Electrical in nature, origin unconfirmed. Naveen looked at the refractometer Levi had set down. "That's a standard fluid tester," Naveen said. "They use those for coolant concentration." "And fuel," Levi said. "The fuel wasn't flagged in any of the 6 assessments," Naveen said. This was not an accusation. It was the sound of a careful person recalibrating. "The fuel system was assessed," Levi said. "Not the fuel. There's a difference." He glanced at Naveen. "It's easy to miss. The car doesn't throw a code for this specific fault because the non-start condition triggers a loop that looks like an ignition mapping error. Every lab was chasing the signal. The signal was real. The source was upstream." Naveen was quiet for a moment. "How do you drain and replace the fuel on an F-50 without disturbing the injection calibration?" he said. Levi told him. He told him in detail. He told him the specific sequence, the specific tools, the temperature range that mattered, and the one valve that required a modified approach because of a design idiosyncrasy in the F-50's tank that was not in any publicly available service. Document, but was in a document Benjamin Marsh had obtained from a Ferrari factory engineer in 1998 and had shared with Levi in the barn in Chatham County on a Tuesday afternoon. Naveen listened. He did not take notes. He had the quality of someone who retained things precisely. "You've done this before," Naveen said. "Once," Levi said, "on a Ferrari F-50. "On that specific issue, on that specific car, yes," Levi said. Phil and Naveen looked at each other. It was the look of people who have both arrived at the same understanding by different routes. Serena Voss arrived at the facility at 11:15. She had cleared 2 meetings. She was 40 years old, and she had the focused energy of someone who had been running a company since 31 and had not yet learned, or had decided not to learn, how to walk slowly into a room. She was in a gray suit. She had a phone in each hand coming off the elevator and put one of them away before she reached the bay. She had been told on the call with Garrett what Levi had found. She had asked 3 questions. The first was, "Is he sure?" The second was, "Why didn't any of the labs catch it?" The third was, "Is it fixable?" The answers had been yes, we're working on that, and yes. She walked into the bay. She looked at the Ferrari. She looked at Levi, who was at the workbench, writing something in a small spiral notebook. She looked at Garrett. "Where are we?" she said. "We're sourcing the replacement fuel," Garrett said. "The tank flush will take about 3 hours. If everything is within spec after the flush and fill, we attempt a start this afternoon." She looked at Levi. "Mr. Cole," she said. He looked up from the notebook. "Mrs. Voss," he said. She studied him for a moment, not rudely. The way a person studies something they are trying to correctly assess. "Garrett says you read all 6 reports last night," she said. "I did," he said. "And you identified the issue from the reports." "I identified a strong candidate," he said. "I confirmed it when I looked at the car." "In 4 minutes," she said. He said nothing. He did not confirm this with pride or deny it with false modesty. He simply looked at her. She looked at the car. 22 months. $268,000 in diagnostic fees, not one of which had identified the root cause. And a man who had read the reports overnight and confirmed the diagnosis in 4 minutes before 9 in the morning. Why didn't they find it? She said. She was not asking Garrett. She was asking Levi. He thought about this honestly. He did not answer immediately. Because they were looking at the car as a system, he said. Electrical, mechanical, hydraulic, fuel delivery. Everything they tested was part of a system. The fuel itself isn't a system. It's a material. And when you're running system diagnostics on a car that isn't throwing a clear fault code, you tend to stay in the systems. He set down the pencil. Nobody tested the material. It's easy to skip. It doesn't show up in any OBD framework. It doesn't flag on a scope. You have to think about where the car has been living and what that environment does over time. She was quiet for a moment. And you thought about that from the reports, she said. The third report mentioned humidity readings in the facility, he said. Footnote 14. Seasonal variance of about 32% between winter and summer. That's enough to condense into a sealed tank over a year or more if the car isn't being run. He paused. Nobody followed the footnote. Serena looked at Garrett. Garrett had the expression of a man who was going to read a great many footnotes going forward. What do you need from us? She said. Nothing this morning, Levi said. I'll walk Phil and Naveen through the flush procedures this afternoon. The three of us can handle it. She nodded. She looked at the car one more time. Then she looked back at Levi. I was told you're difficult to find, she said. I'm findable, he said. Just specific. She almost smiled. It was the almost of someone who was deciding whether this was the right moment for it. I'll let you work, she said. It was Naveen who found out, not from Levi. From the owner of a performance shop in Durham, who had a reputation for knowing things. And who, when Naveen called to ask about sourcing the F-50's specific fuel grade, had mentioned Levi's name in a particular tone and said, "You know who that is, right?" Naveen had said he knew he was a diagnostic consultant. The shop owner had said he was the lead powertrain engineer on the Harlan Racing Team's championship program from 2014 to 2019. He didn't consult. He built the engine package that won at Daytona in 2017, the one that held together for 500 miles under conditions that destroyed two of their competitors' cars. That was Levi Cole's work. He walked away from the program in 2019 when his wife got sick. He never went back. Naveen had absorbed this. Why is he running a one-man diagnostic service in Wendell? Naveen had said. Because his daughter is 6, the shop owner had said, and because she needs him to be in Wendell. Naveen had hung up. He had stood in the corridor outside the bay for a moment. He had thought about what it meant to be very good at a thing, and to choose, without drama and without announcement, to arrange your life around something more important. He had gone back into the bay. He had not said anything to Levi about what he had learned. He had simply worked beside him. He had asked good questions. Levi had answered them fully, which is what Levi did when someone asked a question that came from genuine curiosity, rather than from an attempt to establish standing. Phil found out from Naveen at 2 in the afternoon. Phil had been even quieter than Naveen about it, because Phil had a daughter of his own, who was 8, and who he did not always pick up on time, because the work usually ran over, and he was already thinking about this when Naveen told him, and the thinking took on a different texture after. By 3:15, the tank was flushed. By 3:40, it was filled with the correct fuel grade. Levi checked the injection rail pressure with a gauge from his toolbox. The specific gauge, the one calibrated for this application, which he had owned since 2016, and which bore a small strip of medical tape on the back of L. Cole, written in Anna's handwriting, from the days when they had shared a workshop, and she had labeled everything, because she was the organized one. And he was not. He set the gauge down. He looked at Garrett. Key, he said. Garrett had the key. He handed it to Serena, who had returned to the bay at 3 o'clock and had stood at the edge of it, not interfering, watching the work with the focused attention of someone who was recalibrating what she thought she knew about expertise. She took the key. She looked at Levi. "You should start it," she said. He shook his head. "It's your car," he said. She looked at him for a moment. She walked to the driver's side. She opened the door. She sat down. The cockpit of a Ferrari F50 does not accommodate uncertainty. It is built with the specific geometry of commitment. She sat in it, and she put the key in and she turned it. The V12 fired. Not a rough catch. Not a hesitant idle. It came to life with the particular authority of a naturally aspirated engine that has been correctly calibrated and correctly fueled, and it settled into a rhythm at 900 RPM that was even and clean and unmistakably right. The carbon fiber around the engine bay transmitted a fine vibration. The exhaust note filled the underground facility with something that did not belong underground. Phil put his hand over his mouth. He looked at Naveen. Naveen looked at the car. Garrett looked at his phone, then put it away, then looked at the car. Serena sat in the cockpit. She let it run. She did not rev it. She let it idle, and she listened. She got out. She walked to Levi. She put out her hand. He shook it. "What do I owe you?" she said. He named a number. It was a fair number. It was not a fraction of what the 6 labs had charged. It was the number of a man who knew what the work was worth, without needing to make a point. "Of it," she said. "I'll double it." He said, "That's not necessary." She said, "I know it isn't." She held his gaze. He said, "All right." He called Benjamin Marsh from the parking garage at 4:27. "It ran," he said. "Of course it did," Benjamin said. Naveen from Georgia Tech asked about the non-standard valve approach. Levi said. "I told him." "Good," Benjamin said. "Information that stays in one head isn't as useful as information that moves." "You sound like a fortune cookie," Levi said. "I'm 67 and I've had a hip replacement," Benjamin said. "I've earned fortune cookies. How's the little one?" "Making a project about plants," Levi said. She explained photosynthesis to her class using pepper as an example. "Did it work?" Benjamin said. "Apparently they're all going to be botanists now," Levi said. Benjamin laughed. It was the laugh of an old man who had decided at some point that laughter was the correct response to most things. "Come by on Saturday," Benjamin said. "I've got something in the barn I want you to look at." "What is it?" Levi said. Benjamin said, "Something worth looking at. Bring the fox." Mackie was in the after-school program until 5. Levi picked her up at 4:58. She came out of the building with her backpack and her drawing from the plant project, which was a very detailed rendering of a plant that had Pepper's face. She handed Levi the drawing before she got to the truck. "That's Pepper as a plant," she said. He studied it. "Is Pepper happy about being a plant?" he said. She considered this very seriously. "He doesn't mind," she said. "He says it's educational." She climbed in. She found Pepper on the passenger seat. She picked him up and checked him over. The way she always checked him over, after he had been in the truck all day, as though he might have gotten into something. She straightened his ear. She put him on her lap. "Did you fix the car?" she said. "Fixed it," he said. "Was it hard?" He pulled out of the school lot. He thought about 6 laboratories and 22 months and $268,000 and a footnote that nobody had followed. "Not really," he said. She looked out the window. Pepper," she said, with the careful correction of a child who was aware this happens sometimes. "Pepper thinks you're very good at your job." He glanced at her. "Pepper told you that?" he said. "He tells me things," she said. "When you're not listening." He drove. The highway opened up. March light was going long and thin across the fields east of Raleigh. The kind of light that makes ordinary things look like they were placed there, on purpose. "Daddy," Seki said. "Yeah," he said. "If a car can't start for a really long time," she said, "does it think it's broken forever?" He drove for a moment. "No," he said. "It just waits." She thought about this. She pressed Pepper against her cheek, the way she always did when she was thinking about something that needed to settle. "That's good," she said. He turned onto their road. The house appeared at the end of it, small and lit in the late afternoon. The way houses look when they are the right house. He pulled in. He turned off the engine. Maki was already reaching for the door. He sat for a moment. Through the kitchen window, he could see the light on, the one above the sink that he left on every day, and Anna's green mug on the shelf that he had not moved and did not intend to move. Through the window, it looked exactly like it always looked. Like something reliable. Like something that had waited for him to come home. He got out of the truck. Maki was already at the door with her key. Pepper was under her arm. She got the door open and she went in, and the light from inside fell out onto the step in a yellow stripe. And the day came with it. All the parts of it. The Ferrari and the footnote and the V12, waking up and the number on the invoice and Werner. Benjamin, not Werner, saying, "Come on Saturday, bring the fox." He stood on the step for one more second. Then he went inside. The door closed behind him. The light under it stayed on.